In the world of Pokemon, the player has a distinct advantage over regular trainers, which often goes overlooked. Trainers in the Pokemon universe are forced to use the four most recent attacks that they learn while leveling up their Pokemon. Meanwhile, the player can choose to ignore new moves and also have access to TMs and HMs as well. With that in mind, in today's challenge, I'll be following the same rule and forcing my Pokemon to always learn their newest attacks and forgetting the oldest ones. So for example, if I have a level 13 Torchic with the moves Scratch, Growl, Ember, and Sand attack, when I level up to 14, I must drop Scratch in order to learn Peck. In this example, that might not seem too bad, but that won't always be the case. And to add a little bit more to the challenge, I'll also be playing the game in set mode, level capping my Pokemon to the next gym leader's ace Pokemon's level, and not using items in battle. And with all that out of the way, let's get started. As usual, when starting off in the Hoenn region, we start the game off by setting the useless gift of a clock that my dad got me as a moving gift, which I'll never go back into my room to ever look at again. And then I left to go walk into a stranger's home, where the mom invites me to go invade her daughter's privacy. After introducing myself to May, she realized that she had to go conduct some field research and completely ran past her dad getting attacked by a wild Poochyena. Fortunately for Professor Birch, he has some overpowered and otherwise unobtainable Pokemon, which I can trick him into giving me one, so I stopped and took his Torchic in order to save him. Professor Birch and I then returned to his lab, where I named Torchic Torch. Afterwards, Birch asked me to go flatten May in a battle as payback for abandoning him. I made it up to Oldale, where I was reminded that the Pokemon universe has better healthcare for its Pokemon than the US does for its people, and then I headed out to Route 103 to go fight May. I beat her pretty easily with my Torchic at level 7, and then we headed back to the lab where Birch paid me off with a Pokedex for getting his revenge. May also handed me a few Pokeballs, and then I headed out to go start this challenge. I headed over to Route 102 and started searching for a Lotad for the fight against Roxanne, which I caught and named him Duckweed due to it being the Waterweed Pokemon. I also caught myself a Ralts because, well, who doesn't catch a Ralts first thing in the Hoenn region? I named him Kuswo and then was ready to start pushing forwards. Well, almost. I should probably get Lotad and Ralts caught up on levels a little bit. I switch trained those two high enough to hold their own against some trainers and also caught myself a pickup Zigzagoon, which I named Sticky. Due to the nature of this challenge, I won't be able to use HMs on my normal team, so Zigzagoon will be my HM slave that I won't use in battles, and with the added utility of having pickup while I carry him on my team. And with that, I proceeded forward to Petalburg City. I met up with my dad and then helped Wally catch his Ralts before he left town. I tried to stop by Wally's house to say goodbye before he left, only to find out that he was already gone and his parents didn't even escort him. They just sent a sickly child out into the world despite only owning his first Pokemon for about 30 seconds. He'll be fine. Probably. I left Petalburg and took a quick pit stop on Route 104 to pick up Flappy the Wingold in order to have some backup for Lotad on the upcoming Roxanne fight. Emphasis on the backup though, due to both of her Pokemon knowing Rock Tomb. I then went into Petalburg Woods, where I met a Devon researcher who had the audacity to hide behind a small child when we got attacked by a Team Aqua Grunt who was sporting a soul patch. Gross. I dispatched the grunt and received an EXP share from the researcher as an apology for him being a coward. I made it out of the forest, and while I was headed into Rustboro City, I got my first real taste of the challenge. My Lotad leveled up to 12, forcing me to drop Astonish for a natural gift. This drop in particular wasn't that painful, but it's only gonna get worse from here. I then got to Rustboro and collected the HM for Cut and the Quick Claw, but I still needed some levels before Roxanne. So I headed out to Route 116, picked up Beetle and Nincada, and then proceeded to level up the team until Torchic, Ralts, Swingle, and Lotad hit 14, with Lotad also evolving into a Lombre. Finally, I was ready for Roxanne. Roxanne was a pushover thanks to Lombre. Lombre took out her Geodude in 2 absorbs thanks to its sturdy, and then her Nosepass went down as well 3 hits later. This earned me my first badge of the challenge, the Stone Badge. When I went to leave the gym, I walked out to see a Team Aqua Grunt running off with the same Devon researcher from Petalburg Woods following behind, and he was shouting something about some stolen goods. Once again, the Devon researcher asked me, a small child, to help recover the goods for him. I started following as well, and I also ran into Mr. Briny, who that same Aqua Grunt poking-napped Pico from him too. So I headed into Rustboro Cave, defeated the Grunt, and recovered both the goods and Pico. Afterwards, I headed back over to Rustboro to return the goods and got the letter to deliver to Stephen and Dewford, and then I headed over to Mr. Briney's cottage to set sail. I made it over to Dewford, and since the level cap only increased by 2 levels between Roxanne and Brawley, I decided to head straight into the gym, since I'll need to account from the XP from the gen trainers inside without going over the level cap. I used Wingull to beat down all the gym trainers with a few wing attacks, and made it up to Brawley, where I flopped a bit on my preparation for the fight. I intended on both healing up the team and putting Torchic in the lead, but I got a little trigger happy and jumped straight into the fight with a slightly hurt Wingull leading the team. I started off the fight by throwing a couple supersonics at Brawley's Machop, getting the confuse on the second turn, and then swapped over to Torchic to finish it off with a few pecks. Brawley then sent in his Makuhita, and we traded sand attacks on turn 1, and I got a sand attack off while he went for a bulk up on turn 2. Knowing my lack of luck, even a single sand attack would have been enough to screw my accuracy, so I swapped back into Wingull while he went for a second bulk up on turn 3. I decided to try to use those bulk up stacks against him, missing a supersonic while he bulked up a third time, but then managed to get the confuse off on the next turn. And that confusion immediately paid off, with Makuhita eating a confusion on the same turn. And on the next turn, he missed his arm thrust thanks to the sand attacks from earlier, and then Wingull finished it off one turn later, getting that last bit of HP due to another confusion hit. Those 3 bulk up stacks had me a bit concerned at first, but RNG had my back on this one, giving me an easy win for my second gym fight. Torchic also got to level 16 from that fight thanks to the XP share, evolving into a Combuskin at the end of the battle. With the gym knocked out, the only thing I had left to do in Dewford was to go deliver Stephen's letter. I headed into Granite Cave, gave the letter to Stephen, and before leaving, I also caught Houdini the Abra and Cookie the Makuhita. I headed back over to Briney to continue to Slateport, and he also let me know of my task of dropping off the Devon goods to Stern when I get there. I stopped off at the Seahorse House to defeat the trainers and unlock buying Soda Pop, and then got stocked up on 10 sodas. Afterwards, I made my way into town and found Doc, who I'm not sure I trust getting on any boat that he's designed. But he at least let me know that I could find Stern at the Oceanic Museum. I headed over to the museum, but before I could hand the goods over, we got attacked by the 27th best Team Aqua Grunt. The bar must be pretty low though, because I was able to defeat both him and the other grunt pretty easily with just Lombre. Archie stopped by afterwards to monologue about something. I think he was worried that the Pokemon wouldn't have enough water to take a bath in or something? I don't know. I stopped paying attention. But regardless, they tucked their tails between their legs and ran off. And with that little errand out of the way, I was done in Slateport and ready to head out. No, Licia, god damn it, I said I'm done in Slateport. I made my way up to Route 10, avoiding most trainers up until May due to the looming level cap, and prepped myself for the battle because this rival battle always tends to be a bit annoying. But my preparations definitely paid off. I still had a bit of a minor blunder against her Shroomish where I prepped a Cherry Berry on Combuskin, expecting to get Stun Spored, but thanks to Flame Charge causing Effect Spore to proc, I got poisoned instead, but that's still a better outcome than getting a potential full paralysis. May sent in her Marshtomp second, so I swapped into Wingull. Marshtomp only knows 2 ground moves and Bide, so I was able to take it out for free by just attacking it between the Bides. Finally, May was down to just Slugma. Knowing that it had Rock Throw, I had intended on just sacking Wingull for the free swap into Lombre, but her Rock Throw wasn't enough and I was able to just take it out with a Water Pulse. After fighting May, I dodged the rest of the trainers and made it up to Mauville. While I'm mostly fine with the Pokemon we have on our team, their levels are definitely falling behind the cap, so I took a moment to head over to Route 117 and do some leveling. I had a really close call, which almost caused my first whiteout of the run against Pokemon breeder Lydia when I was out on Route 117. I had put Combuskin and Lombre in the box to avoid overleveling, and my team started the fight a little bit hurt from the previous trainers on the route. Nincada was in the lead when she threw out a Wingull, which Nincada could not stand up to. So I swapped into Ralts to take it out, but was left deep in the red by the end. Lydia sent in a Shroomish next, so I swapped into my own Wingull, only to get hit by Effect Spore, putting me to sleep. The first sleep only lasted 1 turn, and I was able to finish off Shroomish right afterwards, but got Effect Spore a second time, putting me to sleep again, with her Goldeen coming out next. I swapped into Makuhita, which was really my only healthy teammate left at the time, switching immediately into a crit Horn attack which put me deep into the yellow. After a fake out for some quick chip damage, I somehow survived its next Water Pulse with 1 HP, and hit back with my own crit Force Palm, bringing it into the red before I went down on the next turn. At this point, I had to put Nincada in, despite its weaknesses to both water and flying, since my Wingull was asleep and my Ralts wouldn't survive the swap, and managed to live through a super effective Water Pulse and took out the Goldeen. But Lydia still has 3 Pokemon, while my team's on life support. Azurill came in next, and Nincada survived a bubble on 1 HP, and managed to get a Sand Attack off, which caused a sequence of misses, allowing me to build up 4 stacks of Sand Attack before finally going down and giving me a free swap into Ralts. I made a big mistake here, forgetting that Azurill doesn't pick up its water typing until it evolves, so my swap into Ralts for Magic Leaf was kind of a bad plan. Ralts was not able to finish off Azurill even with the accuracy drops, leaving me with only a sleeping Wingull at half HP. But not finishing off the Azurill with Ralts is actually what saved me though. After a few misses and not effective hits from Bubble Beam, Wingull finally woke up and was able to finish off Azurill with a Water Pulse. And then he one-shot her Badoo with a Wing Attack, and was still healthy enough to take on her Skitty for the win. I continued leveling for the gym after that, evolving Abra, Ralts, Nincada... Wait, actually, hold on Nincada. There we go. I pushed back Nincada's evolution to get Metal Claw at 21, and then evolved it into a Ninjask and also received Shedinja. After a quick trip back to Slateport to the Name Raider to nickname Shedinja to Assassin, I was ready to fight Watson. The battle against Watson went well, despite not going according to plan. Watson swapped his Magnemite into Voltorb on the first turn due to being unable to attack my Shedinja, allowing me to get a free Mudslap off on Voltorb. His Voltorb, however, does have a move that can hit Shedinja, so I was forced to swap into Kadabra. But I got a Crit Confusion on the turn immediately after swapping, and took out the Voltorb. Watson put his Magnemite back out, so I just swapped back into Shedinja, and after getting paralyzed by a Thunder Wave, Watson just let his Magnemite go down, uselessly throwing out Volt Switches until it fainted. Finally, it was down to just Magneton, who also doesn't have any attacking moves that can hit Shedinja. It did, however, have Supersonic, but my plan was to lower its accuracy with enough Mudslaps to where with Supersonic's base 55% accuracy, it would just make it miss entirely. The first Supersonic missed and I got the first accuracy drop, but of course the second one still hit, and immediately got the Confusion proc, taking out Shedinja. I sent Makuhita in, thinking a Force Palm would finish it off, but I was just shy of the KO, making me regret not clicking a Fake Out first, which put it in heal range and Watson healed it to full, so I brought it back down to just above half with another Force Palm. Magneton got another Supersonic off, which I immediately got hit by the Confusion again, making me question the legitimacy of RNG in this game. So I decided to play it safe and swapped into Combusken, dodging a Volt Switch on the swap. And then Magneton got another Supersonic off on Combusken on the next turn. However, this time I finally managed to break through the Confusion, getting my Flame Charge off and finishing off his Magneton, earning my 3rd gym badge. Before heading forwards towards Lava Ridge, I had a couple detours to make. First, I headed west over to Verdanturf Town to clear the Rust Turf Tunnel and got the Aggronite, which will come in handy because I also backtracked over to Doofer to go catch Pebble the Aran in Granite Cave now that I've gotten the Mach Bike from Mauville. And after that, I headed north towards Fall Arbor Town, catching Pico the Sandshrew along the way. I got to town and ran into May, asking for help to go save Professor Cosmo from Team Aqua. I headed out to Meteor Falls, and along the way on Route 114, my Makuhita hit 25, evolving into a Hariyama, and I also caught my next teammate, Cotton the Swablu. When I got to Meteor Falls, I ran into May confronting Team Aqua admin Shelly and one of the grunts. We started a double battle, which I just used my newly evolved Hariyama to force palm the ever-living shit out of Shelly's dark types, taking Shelly and the grunt down pretty easily. Team Magma showed up right as the fight was wrapping up, surrounding Team Aqua's escape and... Wait, why is no one stopping him from taking the meteorite? Why are we letting them walk off? Someone send a Pokemon to stop them! Well, okay. At least this Maxi guy seemed reasonable, fighting for mankind and... Wait, show me, a child, no mercy? We're fighting on the same side! Good lord, these people are as dumb as a rock. And yes, I caught that Geodude just for this clip and named him Hazard. After bringing Cosmo back to his home, I took the free teleport with Maid back to Mauville, and headed up to Mount Chimney to go take care of Archie and get to Lava Ridge. And also on my way up to Archie, Wingull hit 25 and evolved off some random nameless grunt along the way. I really didn't prep too hard for Archie like I had done with my other battles since my team countered his pretty well. The only thing I was concerned about was all 3 of his Pokemon have a way to confuse. I started the battle off with Hariyama in the lead, getting swaggered right from the start, but I was able to break through the confusion and one-shot his Mightyena with a Force Palm. Hariyama and Kadabra both leveled up from Mightyena, causing me to lose Force Palm for Belly Drum and Confusion for Reflect, which especially hurt for Hariyama since now my only fighting move is Vital Throw, which is a low priority move. Archie sent out a Golbat next, which I had intended on just whirlwinding out his Sharpedo and Force Palming it, but I didn't want to risk getting hit by Confusion, so I just swapped into Pelipper instead. Golbat also ended up Confuse Raying my Pelipper, but I still managed to get a Water Pulse off. But my next 2 turns weren't as lucky, getting hit by Confusion on the next turn, and then getting crit by Golbat on the following turn, which took Pelipper down to 4 HP, and forced me to swap into Kadabra. I probably should have just swapped to Kadabra instead of Pelipper in the first place, since Golbat would never have thrown the Confuse Ray on the swap. But either way, I outspeeded on the next turn, finishing off the Golbat with a Psybeam. Finally, Archie was down to just Sharpedo, which is not an ideal matchup for Kadabra. I wasn't sure if he would see the kill with Assurance or go for a Swagger, so I decided to stay in case of a Swagger, and I put up a Reflect before getting taken out by Assurance. I sent Hariyama back in, and surprisingly, Sharpedo went for the Screech instead of a Swagger, which allowed me to easily get my Vital Throw off for the win. After the Archie battle, I continued forwards to Lava Ridge, and when I got to town I picked up the Why Not egg from the lady at the spa, and turned up my emulator speed to begin the hatching process. Let's check on the progress. Still a long time to hatch. Okay, screw it, never mind, this is taking too long. I'm not too confident about my team for the upcoming Flannery fight. I have several water Pokemon, but with her entire team having Sunny Day, I'm worried it won't be enough. But the Geodude I grabbed earlier for the Dumb as a Rock joke may actually be the perfect candidate for the fight. So I grabbed him and a few of my other Pokemon and began leveling, evolving Meryl into Azumarill and Sandshrew into Sandslash as well. But you have to wait, Geodude. Just like with Nincada earlier, I held off on letting Geodude evolve until he hit the level cap of 28 for Flannery. Doing this let me get Stealth Rocks at 28 instead of 30, and then evolve into a Graveler just in time for the fight. And now I'm ready to fight Flannery. Although, I'm not sure she is. Based off her speech, it seems like she's employing the fake it till you make it strategy. I went into the fight with my strategy based off of Graveler and Lombre, with Azumarill, Pelipper, Combusken, and Hariyama as the backups in case anything goes wrong. I had everything planned down to the move to get my team ready for a Torkoal, or so I thought. But Flannery just absolutely threw on turn 1, which made this entire fight into a damageless fight for me. I had expected her to go for Sunny Day on turn 1, but instead she just set up a light screen against a physical attacker, letting me set up Stealth Rocks for free. I used Bulldoze on the next turn to Oko her Slugma, which brought out her Numel next. I surprisingly also got the Oko on Numel with another Bulldoze, thanks to both the Stealth Rocks and holding a Soft Sand, which put me in range for the kill. Finally, her Torkoal came out, and thanks to the Stealth Rocks, it brought down her Torkoal low enough to where there was a chance of a 2-hit KO with Bulldoze with 2 high rolls. She wasted her first turn on the Sunny Day, which allowed me to get my first Bulldoze in for free, and then I got the KO on the next turn before she could attack. All of my meticulous planning was for nothing because she just absolutely threw the fight, but I got the Heat Badge regardless, which is all that matters. As I was leaving the Lava Ridge gym, May showed up to give me the Go Goggles and a free teleport back to Petalburg as well, leaving me directly in front of the next gym. And with the level cap only increasing by 2 levels, I decided to just go for it since I'd at least get some of the way there from the gym trainers, so I headed into the gym to fight my dad. I led the fight with Hariyama holding a Chesto Berry against his first slacking, expecting a first turn yawn. He ended up going for Retaliate instead while I went for a Vital Throw, leaving us both at half HP. I tapped his second Vital Throw during his Truant turn, and thankfully it was just enough to finish off the slacking, to which Norman sent in Vigoroth next. I decided to leave in Hariyama knowing that the Retaliate was coming and just let him go down to safely swap in Graveler. I put down Stealth Rocks on the first turn to take out a chunk of his upcoming slacking, and then 2 more Bulldozers later finish off his Vigoroth. I honestly wasn't sure if Graveler would survive a Retaliate from slacking, so I clicked Self-Destruct, but he must have not seen the kill and RNG to Feint Attack instead, which I lived through and then self-destructed, bringing his slacking down to half. Now, despite having Protect on Pelipper to cheese his Truant turns, I instead decided to put in Kadabra because I don't want to run out of Protects while stalling his Truant turns if he happened to heal enough times before I could take him down. I tried using Psybeam hoping for the Confusion, which both didn't get the Confuse and also put him into heal range. I knew it'd be safe to tap another Psybeam on the next turn though since he would heal, but still no luck on the Confuse. Knowing that he would probably OHKO me now that he could attack again, I put up a Reflect which was just enough to live through his feint attack, giving me another chance at the Psybeam Confuse. Sadly, I didn't get the Confuse after 2 more Psybeams, but I did put him back into the red before going down to a feint attack, and with his next turn being a Truant turn, he couldn't heal. So I was able to put in Combuskin and finish him off with a double kick for the win. Once the gym battle was over, I went outside to find Wally had also come back to Petalburg to pick up something from his home. And during the conversation, his father gave me the HM for Surf in order to get across Route 118 and head to Hoenn's East Coast. And then the game forcibly brought the two of us back to Mauville, which saved me a fair bit of time running back. But before I was ready to cross over on Route 118, there was a few Pokemon that I wanted to pick up first. I backtracked over to Route 110 to grab an Electrike with Static, who I plan on leveling up for the upcoming Winona fight. And also while I was out on Route 110, I surfed on over to New Mauville, and despite not being able to get into the door, you can still catch Pokemon in front of the locked door. So I picked up Wingman the Magnemite as well. And with all that out of the way, I headed back over to Route 118 and finally crossed over to the east side, running into that same weird man that I met at the bottom of a dark cave. Before I knew what was going on, him and another unknown accomplice going by the name of Latios had grabbed me against my will and whisked me away to a deserted island. I need an adult. When we got to the island, the strange man forced me, a small child, into a battle against some ruthless criminals alongside of him. But we easily defeated them and I was rewarded with Latias, who I named Saltias, and the Mega Bracelet, which allowed me to start using Mega Evolutions. They dropped me back off at Route 118, and then I continued north to reach the bridge outside of the Weather Institute. The bridge was blocked by 3 Team Aqua Grunts who seemed to have no situational awareness to the fact that trainers can just approach from the south as well. But instead, I headed inside and spoke to the front desk attendant, who is so much of a professional that she'll continue to work during a robbery instead of calling the police. I easily cleaned up the grunts, and with a bed nearby to heal up, I was nice and topped off going into the battle against Shelly, who hasn't improved her posture since the last time we fought. I was able to just OHKO Shelly Sharpedo with a Vital Throw from Hariyama and sent her and the rest of Team Aqua packing from the Weather Institute, and received Puddle the Castform as my reward. I've got the perfect spot for you on my Team Castform, right here in the box. Keep it safe for me, buddy. As I was leaving the Weather Institute and crossing the bridge, I had a thought. Isn't there a May battle coming up? Oh crap, I didn't prepare for this. No prep was needed, however. I was able to just muscle my way through the entire fight with just Hariyama, and getting the HM for Fly as a reward. However, this fight still cost me. Kadabra leveled up to 31 and forced me to drop Psybeam for Recover, which left me with no good attacking moves since Psycho Cut is a physical move, so he won't be useful again until level of 38 when he learns Psychic. I switched out Kadabra for Kirlia back at the Weather Institute, and then continued heading forward to Fortree. I saw Steven once again when I got to town, and followed him out to Route 120. I caught up to Steven on the bridge on Route 120, and he gave me some VR goggles in order to simulate a battle against the Chameleon. Afterwards, I headed back over to Fortree and cleared the Kecleon blocking the gym, and then began clearing the trainers inside of the gym to prepare for Winona. Even with the trainers cleared out of the gym, I still have quite a bit more leveling to do, so I backtracked over to Route 119 and began the grind to 35. I did a lot of grinding, so I'm just going to summarize up everything real quick. I got my whole team up to 35 for Winona, evolving Aeron into Lairon, Electrike into Manectric, Magnemite into Magneton, and the other 3 I'll be taking with me are Shedinja, Combuskin, and Graveler. This will most likely be overkill for the fight, but it's still better than adding a count to the whiteout counter. I also started leveling up the Pokemon in my box as my main team started hitting 35, also getting Kadabra, Kirlia, Azumarill, Hariyama, and Pelipper up to 35, and getting some levels on Lombre, Swablu, Ninjask, and Sandslash as well. I even kept the Why Not egg on me for a little bit, and I finally walked around with it enough for the summary message to finally change. See, now it's, what Pokemon will hatch from this egg? It doesn't seem close to hatching. Still progress. And now that we're all caught up, let's start the Winona fight. I don't think this battle could have gone any cleaner if I tried, especially since I barely planned out the battle. I started off with Manectric in the lead, outspeeding her Swellow and OHKOing it with the discharge. Winona sent in Altaria next, trying to Earthquake me, so I swapped into Shedinja to avoid the hit. I followed up with a Confuse Ray expecting a swap, but she used a Cotton Guard instead. I figured she would still swap soon though, so I popped another Confuse Ray and predicted correctly, she swapped into Pelipper who ate the confusion on the swap. I swapped back into Manectric again, taking a not effective Aerial Ace on the swap, and then discharged once again to OHKO her Pelipper. Winona once again tried to take her Altaria out to Earthquake my Manectric, so I just swapped back into Shedinja and immune the hit again, and then sent out another Confuse Ray as she swapped out her Altaria for Skarmory. Once again, I swapped Manectric back in, eating another weak Aerial Ace on the swap, and then OHKO'd her Skarmory with another discharge. Finally, Winona was down to just Altaria. I safely put Shedinja back in, knowing it can't hurt me, and started throwing out Shadow Balls. My first two Shadow Balls both got the special defense drops, and then my Quick Claw procced on the third one, which allowed me to hit first before she could potentially roost and finish off her Altaria, earning me the Feather Badge. I started making my way towards Lily Cove, getting Combusken up to 36 and evolving into Blaziken by the time I made it into the city. And now I finally have my first Pokemon that's capable of using Mega Evolution. I headed straight towards the battle against May once I got to town, putting Manectric in the lead against her starter Swellow, and thanks to some annoying evasion tactics, I missed my first discharge, but managed to take it out on the next turn with a second one. May sent in her Swampert next, which I didn't really have a good solution for, so I sent in a Azumarill. I put up an Aqua Ring on the first turn in case of any Protect stalling that she might do, and then took out the Swampert a couple turns later with some Play Roughs. Her final two Pokemon didn't really stand any sort of a chance against Azumarill, with Magcargo getting wrecked by an Aqua Tail, and then Breloom going down to a Play Rough for the win. And with May down, there really wasn't much left for me in Lily Cove, but I stopped into the department store for a quick item restock and to try my luck at the lottery. Of course I didn't get it. Has literally anyone ever won one of these? I'm actually curious. After the item restock, I backtracked over to Mount Pyre and began the climb to the summit. I actually climbed so high that I reached a new camera angle, and I also found Team Aqua waiting. Instead of just stopping Archie from stealing the blue orb, I let him walk by and took on Matt instead, one-shotting his Sharpedo with a discharge from Manectric. Afterwards, the old couple that's supposed to be protecting the orbs decided to just give me, a random small child, the red orb, and asked me to take on an entire criminal organization. I swear the adults in this series are just absolutely useless. I headed back over to Lily Cove and finally gave Latias a purpose, teaching him Fly so I could follow Team Aqua back to Slateport. But unfortunately, I was too late to stop them from stealing the submarine. But I did at least get to take on the 26th strongest Team Aqua Grunt. But just like the 27th strongest Team Aqua Grunt, she didn't put up much of a fight either. Afterwards, Captain Stern, just like before, tasked a small child with trying to recover a stolen submarine from a criminal organization, or else it could bring, and I quote, unimaginable disaster upon the world. No pressure though. Stern then gave me a ride back to Lily Cove on a... Wait, how did we get back here? Actually, I'm gonna not think about that, and instead, let's head to the Team Aqua hideout. I claimed the Master Ball inside while Magneton and Manectric made short work of all the grunts until I finally made it over to the submarine. Mao was here again though and blocked me from getting to it, challenging me to a battle to try to delay me for long enough for Archie to take off. I quickly OHKO'd his Sharpedo with a discharge from Manectric again, but even still, he monologued for so long that Archie still escaped. But with nothing left to do in the Aqua base, I began making my way over to Moss Deep, and when I got there, I decided to just go straight into the gym, even though I'm a little bit underleveled. The level cap only increases from 45 to 46 between the 7th and 8th gym, so I need to leave myself a little bit of wiggle room for some mandatory battles before I get to Wallace. I made it to Tate and Liza, and they were, well, nothing special. I went in with Magneton and Azumarill as my two for the double battle, and the plan was to hard focus down the Soul Rock first. That way, in case the worst was to happen, as a last resort I could pull out Shedinja, which Lunatone can't hit. However, Magneton's Flash Cannon just absolutely demolished Solrock on the first turn, so Azumarill's Play Rough went to Lunatone instead, and then I just finished off Lunatone on the next turn with a second Flash Cannon, earning me the Mine Badge. As I was leaving the Moss Deep Gym, the earth began shaking and a huge beam of light appeared from the sea. Conveniently, Steven was here to explain that it was Team Aqua breaking the seal to Kyogre in the Seafloor Cavern, and could be the world's biggest disaster if it wasn't stopped. And then once again, another adult in the game is asking a small child for help. Do we not have like a military or police force in Pokemon? Where the hell is Officer Jenny? But at least he plans to come help me this time. Wait, what do you mean you'll join me after you finish your duties? You're the champion, what could be more important than saving the world? I headed south to Route 128 and dove down to the Seafloor Cavern. Annoyingly, due to needing Surf, Dive, and Strength here, I had to run both Lanoon and Latios for this area, and had to put Magneton away for fear of overleveling. So I wasn't quite running with my best going into this. I got through the cave, avoiding all but one mandatory fight in order to preserve my levels, and made it up to Archie where I finally got my first whiteout of the run. I don't really know why I thought I would have the chance to swap my team around after the cutscene, but that wasn't the case, and it immediately pulled me into battle. I took out a starting Mightyena with my Manectric using some discharges, taking no damage, but I did get my speed lowered from a Scary Face. Archie then put in Muck, who had a pretty high special defense, so I roared him off the field, but not before he lowered my defense with the Screech and brought out his Sharpedo. And thanks to the speed drop from Mightyena, I was unable to outspeed his Sharpedo, getting taken out by a Crunch. I put in Azumarill next and was able to take out the Mega Sharpedo with a Play Rough, but unfortunately his Muck came back out, which is strong against all of my remaining Pokemon. I got Muck pretty far into the yellow with a Double Edge, but ended up going down to a Gunk Shot. I put Kirlia in next and thankfully outsped the Muck and finished it off with a Psychic, leaving Archie with just his Crobat. But Crobat's got some insane speed and was able to take out Kirlia with a super effective Poison Fang, and then afterwards when I sent out Hariyama, got taken out immediately by an Acrobatics. And since Lanoon and Latios are both HM slaves and are not allowed to battle, this is a whiteout. I had gotten so overconfident from all of these fights going so well that I didn't really prepare for this fight. And it turns out the only reason why I've done so well is due to how much I prepared for all these fights. So I won't be making that mistake again and did my preparations for the rematch. I used a rare candy on Hariyama and then put him in the lead for the rematch, starting off with a belly drum to max out my attack, and then took out his Mightyena with a wake up slap before he could finish setting up on me. Archie sent out Muck second again, but this time I was able to OHKO him with the Smelling Salts, leaving my team in a much better position for his Sharpedo and Crobat. He put his Crobat in next, which I wasn't going to outspeed, so I let Hariyama go down for the free swap into Manectric. Manectric got outsped and ate a Poison Fang, getting poisoned, which I had prepared for with a Pecha Berry, curing my poison, and then taking out the Crobat with a Discharge. Finally, Archie put in his Mega Sharpedo, but just like Mad Sharpedo, it stood no chance, getting outsped and one-shot even after Mega Evolving. But despite winning the battle, my character just stood by while Archie revived Kyogre, and I didn't even try to use my Pokemon to stop either him or the Kyogre, despite the consequences quite literally being killing all life on the planet. Reports from the surface began coming in, and we were fucked. So we all went to the surface to check out what was going on. Archie realized he fucked up, and Shelly and Maxie held him responsible and asked me for help calming Kyogre, who had gone to the Cave of Origins in Sutopolis. But no one had the foresight to offer me a ride, seeing as I haven't been there yet to fly myself. Hopefully time isn't a factor. After they left, Steven showed up. I hope what you had to do was important, Steven, because, well, you left a child responsible for saving the world, and I couldn't stop Archie, and now this is happening. Steven also asked for my help at Sutopolis, and then also left me. Why won't anyone give me a ride? I made my way over to Sutopolis with no help from the other 4 adults who are all waiting for me to save the world, making it over to the Cave of Origins door where everybody was waiting on me to do anything besides help me. May even showed up to offer me the power of friendship, so now I can't lose. Everybody was rooting me on and had my back, so I ran off. To heal. I still haven't healed since the Archie fight, And then, after healing, I made my way into the cave to go find Kyogre. I found Kyogre at the top of the cave and jumped on his back to take me deep down into the Cave of Origins, where I began the most intense battle of the playthrough. Or I just threw the Master Ball, catching him and naming him Splash. And with the world saved and this little side quest over, I can finally get back to kicking Wallace's ass. Well, almost. Before I can do that, I gotta get the team prepared. First, I headed over to New Mauville and evolved Magneton into Magnezone, and also evolved Swablu into Altaria, which I delayed by a single level in order to skip over learning Dragon Breath, since I'll be getting Dragon Pulse a few levels after that, and that way I can keep Cotton Guard for longer. Sadly, I also lost a couple pretty good moves during this time, losing Psychic for Hypnosis on Kirlia, and Belly Drum for Endure on Hariyama during the same battle, and also Play Rough for Superpower on Azumarill. I also caught a Mesprit, who I won't be using, and a Tynamo. I'm not sure if I'll end up using Tynamo due to having Magnezone, but he definitely has an interesting moveset for the Elite Four. And with everybody caught up on levels, it was time to get my final badge from Wallace. I led the fight with Shedinja against his Love Disc because it turns out that nobody on Wallace's team can even hit him, or so I thought. But my Quick Claw saved me from the potential issue, which I proc Quick Claw on the first turn, so I hit before her Love Disc used Sweet Kiss, which I had no idea was a confusion skill. Thankfully, since I hit first, it didn't have an opportunity to roll the confusion and kill me, and then I swapped out to Magnezone and finished it off with a Discharge. Wallace sent in his Whiscash next, but I double checked and confirmed Shedinja was 100% safe to swap in, so I swapped Shedinja in and whittled his team down one by one without anybody able to hit me back, until finally Wallace's team was entirely defeated, easily earning me the Rain Badge. After Wallace, I began planning out my team for the Elite Four. A lot of my current team will be losing enough good attacks that I'll need a fair bit of an overhaul, so I headed all the way back to Oldale to catch Fang the Poochyena, who had Runaway, in order to get Intimidate when he evolves. I then headed over to Petalburg Woods to sneak around until I finally ran into a Cottony with Prankster, who I named Hairball. With that out of the way, I began making my way over to Evergrande City. I caught those two in order to start leveling them as I was making my way through Victory Road, but completely forgot about the fact that I would need both Lanoon and Latias to make it through Victory Road, so I had to put them back in the box, meaning I'll have to grind more later. I made it through Victory Road with fairly little problems, until I made it up to Wally. Wally has a fairly similar team to mine, but started off with an Altaria face-off with him having 5 levels on me. But even still, for some reason, I both outsped him, and he made the poor decision to go for an Aerial Ace instead of a Dragon Pulse, so I ended up winning the face-off. Wally sent in his Delcatty next, so I swapped into Hariyama for an easy Oko with a close combat. His Roselia came out next, so I decided to put in Magnezone, predicting the Toxic on the swap, and then one-shotting her with a Flash Cannon. Wally put in Magneton next, and I figured it would go down pretty easily to a close combat from Hariyama, but what I wasn't expecting was for him to outspeed Hariyama and feint me with a Discharge. But I still had Blaziken to counter it, so I took him out and took him down to a Sturdy with a Blaze Kick, and then feinted him on the next turn with another Blaze Kick, which is where the real problem started. Wally's last Pokemon is his Mega Gallade, who will pretty much one-shot Blaziken with a Psycho Cut and Magnezone with a close combat. My Altaria is still a little bit low level for this guy, and Lanoon and Latias are non-combatants, so I wasn't really in a good position here. I decided to leave Blaziken in because if I swapped anything in, it'll pretty much become insta-fainted. But I was able to outspeed and got a Blaze Kick in, which did way more damage than I was expecting, before I went down to a Psycho Cut. I put Altaria in next, completely forgetting about the fact that Magnezone had Sturdy, and just barely lived through a Psycho Cut with 21 HP, and then finished off his Gallade with a Dragon Pulse. Wally gave me a Dawnstone, which... wait. Shit. Cottony needs a Sunstone, not a Dawnstone. Fuck. I looked up how to get a Sunstone, and... well, pre-Elite 4, the options kinda suck. Before the post-game, there's only a few ways to get an Alpha Sapphire, all of which are extremely grindy, and a couple of which are inaccessible to me. I decided to keep my Lanoon on me for the chance of the pickup and rematch Expert Timmy as much as possible while I was grinding my team up to the level cap. I should get it by then, right? Wrong. I got my entire team up to 59 with the exception of Cottony, who I left at 39, and this was in order to get Energy Ball and Cotton Guard before he evolved, and then Hurricane and Moonblast after he evolved. But with my entire team leveled up, I had to resort to more extreme measures to get the Sunstone. Allow me to introduce you to a few new additions to my team. Their names are 5, Finger, Discount, Sticky, who you already know, and then we have Grand and Larceny. I finally got the Sunstone after way longer than I cared to admit, and then finally got Cottony evolved into a Whimsicott. And with that finally done, I took Whimsicott, Latias, and the rest of the Lanoon army and headed out to finish leveling, when I had a little bit of a wild hair. When I was checking out the drop table for pickup, I noticed something interesting. Between levels 81 to 100, you have a 4% chance of getting leftovers, which is otherwise locked behind postgame in this gen. And I got just enough rare candies while running the Lanoon army that I'm pretty sure I can push Sticky up to 81. I mean, the chances are low, but there's no reason not to try, right? Holy shit, no fucking way. I can't believe I actually got it. And literally right before Whimsicott was about to hit the level cap too. After my luck with the Sunstone, I didn't expect to get it at all. And now that my grinding was finally done, I was ready to head into the Elite Four with my final team of Altaria, Hariyama, Magnezone, Shedinja, Whimsicott, and Mightyena. Before heading in, I decided to turn off my XP share because I thought that I was already kind of going in pretty high, and I wanted to handicap myself a little bit. I also chose not to use any Mega Evolutions as well. But even with that, my level cap still seemed like it might be a little bit high for these earlier Elite Four battles, but by the end, I was glad I stuck with 59. There isn't much to say about the fight against Sydney. Altaria OHKO'd his entire team with the exception of Shiftry, who only got 2 weak hits in on Altaria, which got healed up by leftovers before the end of the battle. Phoebe was up next, and while it was slightly more of an interesting battle, it still really wasn't by much. I started off with Mightyena, taunting her Dusclops in case it went for either Confuse Ray or Curse, which instead it just tickled me with a Shadow Punch before going down on the next turn to a Crunch. She sent in her Sableye next, which I decided, despite it knowing Rock Gem, that I was going to swap in Altaria for. But she didn't need to predict my swap like that though. Rude. But even still, it wasn't a lot of damage, especially after the leftover heal, and then I took it out on the next turn with a Moonblast. BP sent in her Dusknoir next, which, thanks to having all the elemental punches, actually poses a threat to several Pokemon on my team. But he's purely physical and weak to dark, so swapping in Mightyena for the Intimidate seemed like the best choice. Thankfully, the Ice Punch I swapped into didn't freeze me, and I got a Crunch up on the next turn, eating a Thunder Punch, which also thankfully didn't get the Paralyzed, and got Dusknoir down to the red. BB healed as expected, but it didn't really matter because my next Crunch crit anyways and finished it off. Banette came in next, so I taunted to block the incoming Will-O-Wisp, and then feinted it on the next turn with a Crunch. She sent in her other Banette next, which I taunted again to block the Tux... Wait, to use Grudge? Well, either way, I feinted again on the next turn with another Crunch for the win. I was pretty confident going into the fight against Glacia with both Magnezone and Hariyama on the team. A little too confident. The plan was close combat the 2 Gulalies, heavy slam the 2 Frostlasses, and then swap to Magnezone for the Whaleren. Simple, right? Well, what I wasn't expecting was for Hariyama to get outsped, and Glalie got off the hail before I could close combat it. Even though Hariyama's base speed was 50 compared to Gulalie's 80, I was assuming between the random EVs I've accumulated, plus being 7 levels higher, would overcome that gap. But surely I'm faster than the Frostlass at 70 base speed, right? Damn it. I was able to eat the Blizzard decently before taking Frostlass out, but the chip damage from the pre-burn and hail put me fairly low. I kept Hariyama in anyways, hoping that with 88 HP, I could at least eat the next Blizzard, and then take it out with a Heavy Slam before going down to the chip damage. But 88 HP was not enough and Hariyama went down, so I sent in Magnezone a little bit earlier than I had hoped. Magnezone took a weak hit from a Shadow Ball and then finished off her Frostlass, so Glacia sent in her Walrein next just to be sacrificed to a discharge. Finally, she put in her final Glalie, who lived through my first discharge and set the Hail back up before full restoring and being a general pain in the ass with Hail stalling. I used a Gyro Ball to lightly weaken her without putting her into heal range, so that on my next turn I could use Discharge and finish her off for the win. Well, that went worse than I was expecting. I honestly thought that Glacia would be the easiest fight, and now I don't have my pre-burn on Hariyama anymore. Hopefully I won't need it. Drake was up next, so it's finally time to use the damn Whimsicott that I put so much effort into grinding for. Despite his first Pokemon being Altaria, who has Aerial Ace, I still went in with Whimsicott, immediately putting up a Cotton Guard to soak up a lot of the incoming damage. I hit Altaria with the Moonblast on the next turn, which put her deep into the red, but just barely didn't take it out. Expecting a heal on the next turn, I decided to put up a second Cotton Guard to max out my defense. Drake and I traded Moonblasts on the next turn, but mine did considerably more damage than his, and then I was able to finish off Altaria on the next turn with one final Moonblast. Drake sent in Kingdra next, which was one of the two Pokemon he had that I was fairly concerned with due to it having Yawn, which of course he used on the first turn. I swapped into Shedinja as he full restored the damage from my Moonblast on the last turn. However, he then realized that he couldn't hit Shedinja, and swapped into one of his two Flygons, which I hit with a Phantom Force. Both of his Flygons can hit my Shedinja, so I had to get out of there. Knowing Drake won't be using a Dragon move on the next turn, I felt it was safe enough to put Altaria back in to bait out the next move and see which one it was, which it ended up being the Flamethrower one, which was less than ideal because I wanted to get Whimsicott back in. But then I noticed a cheesy little opportunity here. The Flygon should always go for either Screech or Dragon Pulse against Altaria, and then always go for Flamethrower against Shedinja. So, since Altaria has both Leftovers and Natural Cure in case it gets burned, and if I just swap back and forth about 15 times, and there we go. He ran out of Flamethrower PP, and then swapped into his Salamence as I was swapping into Altaria. I then finally swapped back into Whimsicott, immuning the incoming Dragon Rush, and then set up two Cotton Guards before taking Salamence out with the Moonblast. Drake sent Kingdra back out, which I figured I could probably just OHKO with the Moonblast, which was just slightly short of finishing it off and left me open to an Ice Beam, which I just barely survived. But from there, both of his remaining Flygons were both slower and less tanky than the Kingdra, so I was able to one-shot both of them for the win. I am extremely happy that RNG blessed me with those Leftovers because that could have gone much worse otherwise. Finally, it was time to face the champion. I looked at his roster on my other screen and realized, oh fuck, I didn't plan a strategy for this. Well shit, this is not a good time to realize this. When I was planning out my strategy for the rest of the Elite Four, I got so caught up on the Metagross that I didn't really plan for any of his other Pokemon. But how bad could it really be though? Steven leads with his Skarmory, so I started with Magnezone, bringing him down to his Sturdy, and he has spikes. Oh no. My strategy for the Metagross was Shedinja, who will now literally go down the second he gets put into the field. Steven literally just took out one of my Pokemon and my counter to his ace Mega Metagross in one enormous oversight that I massively regret. Steven sent an Aggron next, and not wanting to take an Earthquake, I swapped into Hariyama to eat it. I had no plans to keep using Hariyama, so I figured a reversal to take him out to his Sturdy would be good here, so I hit Endure and he missed Iron Tail. Man, he missed Iron Tail again. Okay, screw this, you're taking too long to hit me. I decided just to go for the reversal anyways, which happened to crit, but left him just out of heal range. So I got the KO on the next turn with a second reversal. Claydol came out next, and despite his high defenses, I sent in Mightyena. Claydol annoyingly set up a Reflect during the swap, but I taunted on the next turn so he couldn't also get in a Light Screen. I was losing the damage trade at this point, but I got really lucky with a Sucker Punch crit, which took out the Clay Doll and pretty much saved my Mighty Anna. Steven sent in Armaldo next, and the best plan I could come up with was to send in Whimsicott, due to it having high defenses and also wearing the Rocky helmet. I took a decent hit while swapping in, but after getting my 2 Cotton Guard stacks up, I was able to get Armaldo down between a Moonblast and the chip damage from the Rocky helmet. He sent in Cradily next, and I wasn't really sure what to do. However, I did find out the answer was not staying in on Whimsicott to eat a super effective Sludge Bomb, so I swapped into Altaria and got a Moonblast out before getting Confuse Raid. RNG already blessed me once today with the leftovers, so I didn't want to chance the confusion and swapped out into Hariyama, taking an Ancient Power, which of course gave Cradily the Omni boost. See, this is why I didn't test my luck. Cradily healed up a little bit with a Giga Drain while I tried out a Heavy Slam on the next turn, which, despite being super effective, the damage was a bit underwhelming. However, it was just enough to put him into heal range, and he full restored on the next turn as I followed up with a reversal, bringing Cradily back down into the yellow. But even with a small amount of healing from my Shell Bell, it wasn't enough to survive his next Sludge Bomb on the next turn, and Steven claimed a second one of my Pokemon. This isn't good. I know overall I'm ahead on this fight, but my only plan for his Mega Metagross at this point is Perish Song, and just hope my team doesn't get swept in 3 turns. So I sent in Altaria to finish off the Cradily and be ready for Perish Song when... fucking hell, he Confuse Raid me again. There's no way I'm going to risk getting confused, or even worse, finishing off the Cradily while still confused and then getting hit to confusion on the Metagross. So I swapped into Magnezone and finished off Cradily with a Discharge. If it wasn't already bad, now it's even worse with Altaria not being in position for the Perish Song, as his Mega Metagross was coming out. So I decided to swap into Fang to Sacrifice to get the Intimidate off and a free swap into Altaria, and thanks to the recharge from Giga Impact, I was able to get the Perish Song off for free, and now I just have to live. Metagross switched up to a Zen Headbutt on the next turn, which wasn't quite enough to take out Altaria, and took the Perish count down to 2. He finished off Altaria finally on the next turn with another Giga Impact, taking me down to just Magnezone while his Perish count fell to 1. I got a free turn to use Discharge while Metagross recharged, and I feel like there's some sort of joke here. But after that, Metagross's Perish count fell to 0. And with that, I had beaten a Pokemon Alpha Sapphire run while only using the 4 most recent attacks learned while leveling up on my Pokemon. And I've gotta say, that was an interesting challenge. Usually in other sorts of challenges, like a Nuzlocke, they kind of force you to use different Pokemon that you'd normally not try. This challenge took that a step further, with not only making me use other Pokemon that I traditionally wouldn't, like the Whimsicott, but it also forced me to use different attacks and change my overall strategy for using them. Not to mention the Pokemon having different level ranges where they are just either completely broken, and then leveling up and losing a key move and all of a sudden becoming the weakest member of your team. It added a really interesting, although somewhat inconvenient dynamic into the game as well. But overall, this run was really fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you have any sort of changes to the rule set to suggest or want to see me run this challenge in another gen, let me know. And until next time, I'll see you later.